Hello again and welcome back to World News here on TVP World. My name is Anna Kalczynska. On Friday, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán will meet with US President Donald Trump in Washington. Orbán's trip to Washington appears less about diplomacy and more about securing advantages for himself and Hungary's energy interests that would shield his country's energy sector from secondary sanctions. Orbán's visit to Washington appears driven primarily by concern over potential US sanctions targeting Russian energy giants Rosneft and Lukoil, measures that could expose countries like Hungary to secondary penalties. Budapest continues to look for loopholes to avoid having to look for an alternative to Moscow. Last month, the Trump administration put sanctions on state-affiliated Russian energy companies Lukoil and Rosneft. This will be Orbán's first visit to the White House since 2019. The coalition of the willing has become the coalition of the waiting. That's according to former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen. He warned on Thursday that Ukraine could face a forever war unless Europe quickly increases its support for Kyiv and pressure on Russia. He urged European leaders to unlock frozen Russian assets and to build a missile and drone defense shield along NATO's eastern border to prevent the conflict from dragging on. Rasmussen stressed that without a decisive shift in strategy, the war will continue to drain Ukraine's strength and test Europe's unity. He called on EU governments to release roughly $150 billion in frozen Russian funds to finance Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. He also suggested creating a joint European protection force and deploying air defense systems in countries bordering Ukraine. According to Rasmussen, relying solely on the United States is no longer enough. Europe must take the lead. Ukraine is stepping up efforts to cut off Russia's wartime revenues, introducing sanctions targeting its operations in the Arctic. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says the measures are being coordinated with the European Union and other partners to tighten economic pressure on Russia.
We have our new sanctions, a package targeting Russian activities in the Arctic. For Russia, this is a very profitable business. A significant portion of the resources our enemy sells each year are extracted precisely on those lands and in those waters in the Arctic. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars annually. Just as with the tanker fleet and Russian oil companies, we are working with partners so that they will act against the entire volume of resources that the Russians sell from the Arctic. This is fair. Any way to limit Russian revenues is an effective countermeasure to the war. We have also synchronized the EU's 19th sanctions package, as I promised, within our jurisdiction. It is important that other European countries outside the EU do the same, in particular Norway, Switzerland and the United Kingdom. Our partners hear us and adopt our proposals. Overall, our coordination on sanctions is very good, so we will continue to increase pressure on Russia over this war.
Lukoil's troubles continue. EU sanctions have severely complicated the running of operations for Russia's second-largest oil company. And now, adding to this, its much-anticipated deal for the sale of its foreign assets has been blocked by the US Treasury. Energy trader Gunvor has withdrawn its bid to purchase the international assets of Russian oil giant Lukoil, as the US Treasury signaled it would not approve the deal. It called Gunvor a Kremlin puppet and insists that Russia must end its war in Ukraine before such sanctions can go forward. Lukoil had announced plans last week to sell its overseas holdings to Gunvor in response to tightening US sanctions. Gunvor, registered in Cyprus, strongly rejected the accusation, saying it has spent more than a decade distancing itself from Russian business and has openly condemned the war. The company remains one of the world's major players in oil and liquefied natural gas trading. One of its original founders, Gennady Timchenko, has been sanctioned by the United States since 2014 for his close relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russian troops shelled Zaporizhia, damaging residential buildings and kindergarten. There were no fatalities or injuries. According to the head of the Zaporizhia Oblast Military Administration, Ivan Fyodorov, the situation remains under control.
That's my window, my balcony on the first floor. We were very frightened. It was around midnight. The result is, I just can't believe it. We didn't have time to hide. This is the first time we've been affected. Our window was blown out. In one room, the frames were damaged, the balcony windows were shattered, and the car was hit. It was a very loud explosion around midnight, and the glass scattered everywhere. It was so loud, it felt like the whole building was collapsing. Of course, we'll repair everything. We'll try to replace the windows.
The European Commission is ramping up negotiations with Belgium to secure a vital €140 billion reparation loans for Ukraine, as Kyiv faces the risk of depleting its fund by spring. On Friday, the European Commission will try to mitigate Belgium's concerns over the legal and financial risks of repurposing Russian assets. Brussels is impeding a planned EU megaloan, which aims to give Kyiv 3 years of financial breathing room. Over the next 2 years, Ukraine's budget deficit is expected to reach about $60 billion, and that's not counting defense spending. Belgium remains undecided on using frozen Russian assets for Ukraine because it fears legal challenges, financial liabilities, and damage to its reputation as a financial hub, given that most of the assets are held in Brussels through Euroclear. Once Belgian concerns are satisfied, the Commission is going to formally propose legislation on the reparations loan in the coming weeks. It's the latest in a recent string of drone-related air traffic disruptions, this time in Sweden. Flights were temporarily halted at Gothenburg Landvetter Airport on the country's west coast on Thursday after authorities spotted one or more drones in the area. The airport in Sweden's second largest after the one in the capital Stockholm. Drones have caused major disruptions across Europe in recent months, forcing temporary closures of airports in several countries. The most recent incident took place just 2 days ago, on Tuesday, in the Belgian capital. The incidents are believed to be linked to Russia, but Moscow denies any involvement. The airspace above the airport will remain closed while police investigate the incident. China has become a global leader in solar power, transforming its energy landscape with massive solar farms and enormous wind farms that stretch for miles. These projects are helping the country achieve greater energy independence while addressing pollution and reducing reliance on fossil fuels. In the United States.
2 years ago, there was nothing here but desert. We've installed 6 million solar panels, 2 million of them in less than 6 months. The electricity goes all the way to Hunan province, 1,700 kilometers from here. We can produce 500 million kilowatt hours, enough to power 4.5 million homes for a whole year. This area is the equivalent of 6,300 soccer fields, so we use drones. I check that none of the panels are broken and that all of them are facing the sun. In our field, China is the world leader.
In the United States, several people fell ill at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland and were treated in the hospital after a suspicious package containing a white powder was opened at the military facility. According to CNN, 2 buildings were evacuated as a precaution. The broadcaster reports that multiple people were transported to the on-base medical center after the package was opened. CNN said an initial field test from the hazmat team did not detect any hazardous, but the investigation remains ongoing. In Colombia's remote Cauca region, Makeshift labs concealed a dense jungle are producing cocaine bound for the international market. It's one link in a sprawling and violent trafficking chain that runs across the Americas and into Europe's cities.
It's illegal. If we get caught, we go straight to prison. I know we're hurting people, especially the young, but I don't have a choice. It only brings in just enough to feed my family. The cocaine is in the white vein in small amounts, so you need chemicals to extract it. Otherwise, it won't come out. We pour in white lime, kind of like cement. It's really bad for your health. We don't know the drug traffickers we sell this coca paste to. We only deal with intermediaries and have no idea where it's sent. Yes, I live in fear. There are so many criminals, and when night falls, it's a death trap. You can't go out. It's too dangerous. Drugs are absolutely everywhere, and so is the trafficking. When you look at who serves the dissident FARC groups, you see a lot of young people, including minors under 18. They operate exactly like drug cartels, and they work directly with Mexican cartels in drug trafficking.
And that's all in this news bulletin. Thanks so much for watching. Please stay tuned to TVP World and have a good day.